When we think of the Knights Templar, we often imagine armored warriors cloaked in white mantles adorned with the blood-red cross, galloping across dusty battlefields under the scorching Levantine sun. But to truly understand their birth, we must first step back into a time of chaos, a world torn apart by faith, ambition, and bloodshed. The Knights Templar were not born in peace, they were forged in fire, in the crucible of one of the most violent episodes in medieval history, the Crusades. The First Crusade began in 1096, summoned by Pope Urban II at the Council of Clermont. Europe was a fractured land of warlords and kings, where famine, plague, and constant skirmishes had left many desperate for both purpose and salvation. Urban's fiery sermon promised exactly that, forgiveness of sins and eternal glory in exchange for taking up arms against the so-called infidels who held the Holy Land. Tens of thousands answered the call, knights hungry for adventure, peasants desperate for deliverance, and opportunists seeking land, wealth, and prestige. What followed was a campaign that would transform not only the Middle East but also the very fabric of Western Christendom. When crusading armies reached Jerusalem in 1099, the city was a glittering prize, sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. Its walls had withstood countless sieges before, yet the Crusaders fought with a fanaticism unmatched. For 6 weeks, they battered Jerusalem's defenses, starving, bleeding, and dying beneath the hot desert sun. Finally, on July 15, the Crusaders breached the city walls. What followed was an orgy of violence so brutal it horrified even medieval chroniclers. Streets ran red with blood as Muslim and Jewish inhabitants were massacred indiscriminately. Fires consumed homes, screams echoed through alleyways, and the holy city became a slaughterhouse. Chroniclers wrote that Crusaders waded through blood up to their ankles. To the victors, it was divine justice. To the conquered, it was apocalypse. It was in the aftermath of this conquest, amidst corpses, burning incense, and crumbling walls, that the idea of a permanent Christian presence in the East began to take form. The Crusaders did not return home, instead, they carved out fragile kingdoms across the Levant, enclaves of Latin Christianity surrounded by hostile forces. Jerusalem became the crown jewel of this so-called Latin kingdom. But it was perilously isolated, a small fortress in an ocean of enemies. Pilgrims from Europe still streamed toward the Holy Sepulchre, but the roads leading to Jerusalem were treacherous, plagued by bandits and ambushes. Many never made it to the sacred shrines, their bones left to bleach beneath the desert sun. It was in this volatile landscape that the Knights Templar would emerge. Around 1119, nearly 2 decades after Jerusalem's conquest, a small group of knights swore an oath before the King of Jerusalem, Baldwin II. Led by Hugues de Payens and Geoffrey de Saint-Omer, these 9 men pledged to dedicate their swords not to conquest, but to protection. Their mission was simple, yet extraordinary, to safeguard pilgrims traveling to and from the holy sites of Christendom. Unlike other warriors of the era, they were not mercenaries or opportunists. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, binding themselves in both faith and arms. Their name derived from their headquarters, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, built atop the ancient site of Solomon's Temple. From this symbolic stronghold, they became known as the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, or, more famously, the Knights Templar. Their base gave them not only a name but also an aura of divine legitimacy. To the medieval mind, this was no coincidence. These warriors of God had taken up residence at the very heart of biblical history, upon ground that many believed still held relics of immense power. Yet for all their piety, the Templars were children of bloodshed. Their order was born from the carnage of Jerusalem and baptized on the battlefields of the Crusades. The contrast could not have been sharper: knights who vowed to renounce personal wealth, yet lived by the sword, warriors who pledged to protect pilgrims, yet became synonymous with war itself. They were monks and soldiers, bound by both scripture and steel. Their early years were modest, almost monastic. With only a handful of men, their influence seemed negligible. But their reputation grew rapidly. Pilgrims began to whisper of these armored guardians who rode alongside them, defending them from ambushes. Word spread through Europe, carried by merchants, bishops, and travelers. By 1129, at the Council of Troyes, the Church officially recognized the Templars as a holy order. Endorsed by the papacy and blessed by Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most powerful churchmen of the era, their destiny was sealed. The Templars were no longer just a band of knights, they were the sword of Christendom itself. But their founding moment, the crucible of their identity, remained tied to that blood-soaked conquest of Jerusalem. Without the chaos of the Crusades, without the desperation of pilgrims and the fragility of the Latin kingdom, the Knights Templar would never have existed. They were both a product of necessity and a reflection of the violent age that birthed them. And here lies the paradox: were the Templars protectors of the weak, or instruments of further bloodshed? Did their mission arise from genuine devotion, or from the same hunger for power that drove the Crusades? These questions linger like shadows across history. One thing, however, is certain: from their inception, the Templars carried the dual legacy of the Crusades, the dream of holy protection and the nightmare of holy war. As we move deeper into their history, we must remember the battlefield on which they were born. For the Templars were not merely knights of God, they were knights of blood, molded by the ferocity of an age where salvation was bought with steel, and holiness was written in crimson. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem is one of the most contested and mysterious pieces of ground on earth. For Jews, it is the site of Solomon's and Herod's temples, the beating heart of their ancient faith. For Muslims, it is the Haram al-Sharif, crowned by the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven. For Christians, it is a place woven into biblical history, shadowed by prophets, kings, and miracles. But for the Knights Templar, this sacred plateau became something else entirely: a vault of hidden secrets, a gateway to forbidden knowledge, and the very foundation of their legendary mystique. When Baldwin II, King of Jerusalem, granted the Templars quarters within the Al-Aqsa Mosque around 1119, the move seemed practical. The fledgling order needed a headquarters, and the massive structure, built by Muslims in the late 7th century, stood upon the very ruins of Solomon's Temple. For medieval minds, this was no ordinary real estate. This was holy ground layered with centuries of myth. And the Templars, sworn guardians of Christendom, suddenly found themselves living atop one of the most enigmatic sites in human history. Almost immediately, rumors began to swirl. Pilgrims whispered that the Templars were not just knights but secret excavators, tunneling beneath the sacred mount. Chroniclers spoke of strange digging operations, of earth being hauled out under the cover of night. Some claimed they sought hidden treasure, others believed they searched for relics of unimaginable power. Whatever they were doing, it was not simply guarding pilgrims. Something deeper was at work. What could they have been looking for? Theories abound, and they range from the plausible to the fantastical. One possibility is that they sought the fabled treasures of the Temple of Solomon, golden artifacts plundered by the Babylonians in 586 BCE and thought to have vanished forever. Chief among them was the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest said to hold the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. To medieval Christians, recovering such a relic would have been the ultimate triumph, proof that God had chosen them as his new people. Others whisper of the Holy Grail, the chalice said to have caught Christ's blood at the crucifixion. Though the Grail legend would not take full shape until centuries later, early forms of the story were already circulating in Europe during the Templars' time. Could the Knights have been its hidden keepers? Still others suggest the Templars unearthed forbidden scrolls, ancient texts buried deep beneath the Temple Mount. These writings, some speculate, contained heretical knowledge, secrets of Jewish mysticism, early Christian gospels long suppressed, or even wisdom from older civilizations lost to time. To their enemies, this became a convenient explanation for the accusations of heresy that would later destroy them. To their admirers, it was evidence that the Templars were more than warriors, they were guardians of forgotten truths. Modern archaeology has added fuel to these fires. Excavations in the 19th and 20th centuries revealed that indeed, a network of tunnels and passages lies beneath the Temple Mount. Some of them date back to the time of Herod, others to later centuries. These discoveries prove that subterranean exploration is possible and that such digging would not have been beyond the reach of determined medieval knights. Even today, much of the area beneath the mount remains off-limits, shrouded in secrecy, its mysteries unresolved. One intriguing clue comes from the Copper Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the mid-20th century. Unlike the others, which contain religious writings, the Copper Scroll is essentially a treasure map. It lists dozens of hidden caches of gold and silver, supposedly buried around Jerusalem during the Roman wars of the 1st century. Some have speculated that the Templars, digging under the Temple Mount, may have stumbled upon this ancient knowledge or even the treasure itself. But treasure alone cannot explain the enduring aura of secrecy. Many historians argue that what the Templars may have uncovered was not simply wealth, but knowledge. During their years in the East, they encountered Islamic scholars who preserved the wisdom of the Greeks, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine that Europe had largely forgotten. Combined with whatever they may have found beneath the Temple Mount, the Templars could have possessed a library of insight centuries ahead of their time. Could this be why their contemporaries whispered of strange rites and heretical teachings? Could this be the hidden root of their forbidden history? The Templars themselves never revealed their secrets. Their official chronicles speak little of their activities beneath the mosque. Yet, legends continued to grow. Later centuries tied the order to the Kabbalah, to alchemy, even to esoteric traditions that would inspire the Freemasons. For conspiracy theorists, the Temple Mount remains the birthplace of a hidden lineage of secret knowledge, passed down from the Templars into modern secret societies. Of course, skeptics argue that much of this is fantasy, retroactively projected onto the Templars by later storytellers. Perhaps they were merely repairing their headquarters, storing supplies, or conducting mundane construction. Perhaps their reputation for secrecy was simply the byproduct of medieval paranoia. But if that were the case, why do the legends endure with such intensity? Why does the very idea of hidden chambers beneath the Temple Mount capture the human imagination like few other mysteries? The answer may lie not in what they found, but in the perfect collision of myth, faith, and fear. The Templars chose to anchor themselves in the most symbolically charged site in the Christian imagination. By doing so, they invited centuries of speculation. Whether or not they uncovered forbidden relics, their very presence there was enough to spark legends that refused to die. And so, as we picture the Templars descending into the darkness beneath the Temple Mount, torches flickering against ancient stones, we must ask, did they touch the sacred? Did they uncover truths too dangerous to reveal? Or did they simply plant the seed of a legend that would one day overshadow their entire order? The answers remain buried, sealed beneath layers of stone, faith, and time. But one thing is certain, from the moment the Templars claimed the Temple Mount as their home, they became more than knights. They became mythmakers, guardians of mysteries that echo through the ages. When the Knights Templar first emerged, they were known as the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. Their white mantles and crimson crosses symbolized purity and sacrifice, and their vows of poverty were meant to strip them of earthly temptation. To the eyes of pilgrims and kings alike, they were warriors who had renounced wealth in favor of devotion. And yet, within less than a century, these same humble knights would become one of the most powerful and wealthy organizations in the medieval world. How did men who claimed to own nothing come to own everything? The paradox of the Templars lay at the heart of their success. Each knight was bound to poverty, but the order itself was not. This distinction allowed the Templars as a collective to acquire lands, castles, and vast resources, even as individual brothers remained poor. As donations poured in from across Europe, the Templars transformed from a small brotherhood into a sprawling international institution. Noble families eager to support the crusading cause gifted them estates. Merchants, in exchange for protection, entrusted them with money and goods. Even kings began to recognize the value of having the Templars as allies. Their power grew not only from generosity but also from innovation. The Templars were among the first in Europe to master the art of financial security. Imagine a pilgrim traveling from Paris to Jerusalem. Carrying gold across thousands of miles was perilous, thieves and bandits lurked on every road. The Templars offered a solution. The pilgrim could deposit money at a Templar preceptory in France and receive a coded letter of credit. Upon arrival in the Holy Land, he could present this document and withdraw funds from another Templar house. In essence, the Templars had invented one of the earliest systems of international banking. This system revolutionized medieval travel and commerce. It was secure, efficient, and trusted across borders. Over time, their network of preceptories and commanderies functioned much like modern banks, safeguarding wealth, offering loans, and even financing armies. Kings and nobles borrowed heavily from the order, often pledging castles and lands as collateral. Ironically, rulers who commanded entire kingdoms found themselves financially dependent on a fraternity of knights who once begged for sustenance. The order's wealth wasn't limited to coin. They owned vast stretches of farmland in England, vineyards in France, mills in Spain, and bustling ports along the Mediterranean. Their properties were meticulously managed, with revenues flowing steadily into the coffers of the temple. Their castles, monolithic fortresses like Croc de Chevaliers in Syria or Tomar in Portugal, stood as both military bastions and symbols of dominance. Some were so advanced in design that they seemed impenetrable, incorporating features like concentric walls, underground passages, and massive water cisterns. To enemies, they were nightmares of stone. To allies, they were fortresses of hope. But with wealth came influence, and with influence came suspicion. How could a group sworn to humility command such riches? How could monks in armor hold sway over kings? Their very success bred whispers of corruption. Their secrecy, so essential to their discipline, only magnified the unease. People began to ask, were the Templars still holy warriors, or had they become merchants in chainmail? Even within Christendom, their power was unmatched. In battle, the Templars fought with a reputation for fearlessness. Bound by oath never to retreat unless outnumbered 3-1, they became the shock troops of crusading armies. Yet, off the battlefield, their role as financial brokers and landowners made them indispensable to the very kings who feared them. Monarchs owed them debts, the church relied on their loyalty. This dual nature, warriors and bankers, made the Templars unique, but also dangerous. One striking example of their growing clout came during the reign of King Henry III of England. At one point, Henry entrusted the English crown jewels to the Templars for safekeeping, storing them in the London Temple. Think of the symbolism, the treasures of a kingdom, guarded not by the king's men but by a foreign order of monks in armor. Such gestures cemented the Templars' reputation as incorruptible, but also as untouchable. The more they expanded, the more their influence seemed to transcend borders. Unlike other medieval institutions, which were tied to specific kingdoms or lords, the Templars answered only to the Pope. This papal protection gave them autonomy few others enjoyed. They were exempt from taxes, free from local laws, and immune to many secular authorities. In an age when kings often clashed with the Church, the Templars stood as a reminder of papal reach, an army of God loyal not to thrones, but to Rome. Yet beneath this polished exterior, cracks began to form. Their growing wealth drew envy from rival orders, especially the Knights Hospitaller, who also fought in the Holy Land. Secular lords, too, began to resent the order's independence. To peasants who worked their lands, the Templars were often landlords first and holy men second. And as the Crusades dragged on with dwindling success, critics questioned whether the order's riches were truly serving the cause or merely enriching themselves. Still, for over a century, the Templars managed to balance this paradox, living as paupers but ruling as princes. Their fortresses stood like monuments across Europe and the Middle East, their financial network spanned continents, and their influence reached the highest corridors of power. But with every coin they collected and every debt they secured, they sowed the seeds of future peril. Kings do not like to owe. And when debt turns to desperation, even holy warriors can be recast as villains. As we transition deeper into their story, we must remember this transformation. The Templars were no longer the humble 9 knights who vowed to protect pilgrims on dusty roads. They had become a global force, a corporation of faith, finance, and war. And while this meteoric rise brought them glory, it also painted a target on their backs. For in the medieval world, power without a crown was dangerous. And the Templars, cloaked in both armor and secrecy, had amassed more power than many kings could tolerate. When we imagine the Knights Templar, we often picture thundering charges across battlefields, swords raised in the name of God. But much of a Templar's life was not spent in glorious combat. Instead, it unfolded behind the thick stone walls of commanderies, castles, and monasteries, where discipline, devotion, and secrecy shaped their identity just as much as war ever did. To understand the order, we must step into their world, not as warriors, but as brothers bound to a life of strict routine and hidden rituals. The Templars followed a code unlike that of any other knights in Europe. Inspired by the rule of Saint Benedict and adapted by Bernard of Clairvaux, their daily existence blended the austerity of monks with the demands of soldiers. At dawn, they rose not to the clash of swords but to the sound of prayers. Hours of the divine office structured their day, each marked by chants and psalms. Even before breakfast, their voices echoed in stone chapels, a chorus of warriors reciting prayers of penitence. Their clothing reflected their vows. Each brother wore the iconic white mantle, symbolizing purity, emblazoned with the crimson cross, a stark reminder of the blood they were willing to spill for Christ. Beneath the cloak, however, their garments were simple and uniform, coarse tunics, rough fabrics, no jewelry or decoration. Unlike other knights who flaunted wealth through gilded armor and fine silks, Templars embraced humility, or at least the appearance of it. Vanity was forbidden. To own more than what was necessary was considered sin. Meals, too, were a matter of strict regulation. They ate in silence, heads bowed, listening as a brother read aloud from Scripture. Meat was limited, extravagance at the table was strictly prohibited. Bread, vegetables, fish, and watered wine were common staples. Their communal dining halls reinforced the idea that each knight was merely part of a greater whole, no individual could rise above the group. To remind them of mortality, even meals were punctuated by prayers and rituals of self-denial. Discipline extended to their private lives. The Templars were forbidden to marry, to pursue romantic attachments, or even to embrace their own families too closely. They were soldiers of Christ, not men of worldly ties. Women were strictly banned from Templar houses, even speaking too much to a woman was grounds for punishment. Chastity was a weapon as sharp as any sword, a way to sever all distractions from their sacred mission. But what truly set the Templars apart, and what gave rise to centuries of rumors, were their secretive rituals. Initiation into the order was no simple matter. When a new recruit sought admission, he was brought into a candlelit chapel, stripped of his worldly possessions, and asked 3 times if he truly understood the burdens he would bear. Then came the oath, to live in poverty, chastity, and obedience, to defend Christendom until death. Some accounts describe the initiate kneeling before the master of the temple, swearing loyalty not only to the order but to hidden truths whispered in the shadows. These ceremonies were cloaked in secrecy, and secrecy breeds speculation. Enemies of the Templars later accused them of blasphemy, claiming initiates were forced to spit on the cross, deny Christ, or engage in bizarre acts of humiliation. Some spoke of mysterious idols, grotesque heads worshipped in candlelit chambers. Others whispered of kisses exchanged in strange places as signs of loyalty. Were these accusations slander invented by rivals, or distorted echoes of genuine secret practices? The truth remains elusive, lost in the haze of history and the silence of the brothers who never broke their vows. Beyond ritual, punishments were swift and severe. A Templar who disobeyed orders might be flogged, forced to eat on the floor, or even expelled from the order entirely. Cowardice in battle was unthinkable, retreat without permission meant disgrace. Their iron discipline was not merely spiritual, it was the backbone of their military success. Each knight was trained to obey without hesitation, to place the mission above his own life. This absolute unity made the Templars one of the most effective fighting forces of the medieval world. Yet life was not entirely without comfort. Though bound by vows, the Templars enjoyed certain privileges. They were respected, feared, and admired across Christendom. Commoners saw them as holy warriors, saints in armor. Pilgrims revered them as protectors. Their castles and commanderies provided stability and brotherhood in a violent, uncertain age. Within their ranks, a knight could rise not by birthright but by merit, a rare possibility in a rigidly hierarchical world. Still, the question of mystery lingers. Why did so many believe the Templars practiced forbidden rites? Part of the answer lies in their secrecy. Unlike monks in open monasteries, Templars lived behind guarded walls, their ceremonies closed to outsiders. Their dual identity, half monk, half warrior, made them hard to categorize, even harder to trust. When whispers of heresy emerged during their downfall, the public imagination was quick to fill the void with scandal. Whether or not the Templars truly engaged in strange rituals, the perception of secrecy was enough to create their legend. Their disciplined lifestyle, hidden initiations, and aura of mystery laid the groundwork for centuries of speculation. Were they holy ascetics, or occultists cloaked in the mantle of Christ? Were their vows a shield of faith, or a mask for darker truths? One thing remains clear: the Templars were unlike any other knights of their time. Their daily lives fused prayer and sword, humility and power, secrecy and discipline. And in this paradox, they became something more than men. They became symbols, both feared and revered, guardians of mysteries that still fascinate us today. The Knights Templar were once celebrated as Christ's most faithful warriors. They fought and died for the cross, their red banners flying above the deserts of the Holy Land. But as centuries passed, whispers began to twist their image. Rumors seeped from cloisters and courts, dark tales whispered by rivals, enemies, and frightened kings. These stories claimed that the Templars, those holy warriors, were no longer the servants of Christ, but the disciples of darker powers. It is within these shadows of suspicion that their legacy shifted from sacred to forbidden. The idol of Baphomet. The most infamous accusation leveled against the Templars was their alleged worship of a mysterious figure known as Baphomet. Chroniclers described it variously as a severed head, a demonic idol, or a grotesque statue with both male and female features. Some claimed it was a brass head with ruby eyes, capable of whispering secrets. Others insisted it was a pagan deity to whom the Templars bent their knees. But what was Baphomet? Was it simply a corruption of Muhammad, a medieval misunderstanding that accused the Templars of adopting Muslim practices during their time in the East? Or was it, as some later occultists believed, a true esoteric symbol, representing hidden knowledge and forbidden rites? During their trials in the early 14th century, dozens of captured Templars confessed under torture to venerating this mysterious idol. They spoke of kissing it, praying to it, even believing it granted them wealth and protection. Skeptics argue these confessions were forced and fabricated. But the image of the Templars kneeling before a dark god was enough to ignite terror across Europe. Spitting on the cross. Another charge shocked Christendom, that new initiates into the order were forced to spit upon the cross, to trample the symbol of Christ, and to deny his name. To the faithful, this was the ultimate betrayal, an inversion of everything the Templars supposedly stood for. Again, many knights later claimed such confessions were wrung from them under brutal torture. And yet, the accusations stuck. Why? Because secrecy breeds suspicion. Outsiders were never allowed to witness Templar initiations. What took place in those candlelit chapels remained a mystery, and mystery in the medieval imagination quickly became heresy. If the Templars did not truly spit upon the cross, why were so many willing to believe they had? Perhaps because, in their very structure, the order seemed to exist beyond ordinary Christian life. They answered to no king, no local bishop, only to the Pope himself. To some, this independence smelled of arrogance. To others, it suggested allegiance to something, or someone, outside the Church's control. Forbidden knowledge beyond idols and blasphemy, there were subtler accusations, that the Templars possessed books of heretical wisdom, teachings gleaned from their years in the Holy Land. Some believed they had studied Islamic mysticism, Jewish Kabbalah, or even ancient Gnostic texts. To their critics, this made them not holy warriors, but dabblers in forbidden arts. It was said they whispered secret prayers not to the Christian God but to hidden forces. That they practiced magic, alchemy, and divination. That they had unlocked mysteries of life and death which the Church had sought to bury. These were dangerous accusations in a world where knowledge itself could be heresy. And here lies the question: did the Templars truly embrace these practices, or were they simply accused of doing so by those who envied their power? Islamic influence and occult rumors. The Templars lived and fought in close contact with Muslim warriors, scholars, and mystics. Unlike most Europeans, they had first-hand exposure to the sophisticated sciences of the Islamic Golden Age: astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. To some, this cultural exchange was a mark of corruption. They accused the Templars of adopting foreign, even pagan, ideas. Later legends claimed that the Templars were custodians of esoteric knowledge they learned from Muslim Sufis or from Jewish mystics in the Holy Land. Could their reputation for secrecy have masked genuine intellectual exploration? Perhaps. But in the paranoid eyes of medieval Europe, curiosity was indistinguishable from heresy. Secret rites and strange kisses. Perhaps the most salacious accusations came from the trials themselves. Templar brothers, racked with pain on the rack, confessed to obscene rituals. They were said to exchange kisses on the mouth, the navel, even the base of the spine during initiation ceremonies. To their accusers, these were not signs of brotherhood but of unnatural sin. Modern historians tend to dismiss these claims as inventions designed to scandalize. Yet, in the fevered atmosphere of 14th-century Europe, such stories were irresistible. They painted the Templars as not just heretics but degenerates, men whose hidden lives mocked the very faith they claimed to defend. Victims of slander, or keepers of secrets? The Templars' downfall was built upon these accusations. In 1307, King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the order, ordered their arrest. Torture extracted confessions that confirmed every fear: idol worship, blasphemy, occult rites. Though many knights later recanted, the damage was done. But the deeper question lingers: were these accusations entirely fabricated, or was there some kernel of truth? Could the Templars have developed private rituals, symbolic or allegorical, that were misunderstood, or deliberately twisted, by their enemies? Or had they truly uncovered forbidden knowledge beneath the Temple Mount, secrets too dangerous to share, which later fueled tales of heresy? What we know for certain is this: the Templars' combination of secrecy, wealth, and independence made them ideal scapegoats. Kings and popes could project onto them every fear and resentment of Christendom. And once the whispers began, they grew into a storm that no fortress could withstand. The legacy of heresy centuries later, these accusations would take on new lives. In the 19th century, occultists like Eliphas Levi resurrected the image of Baphomet, drawing it as a goat-headed figure with torch and pentagram, a symbol that endures today in esoteric and satanic traditions. Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and other secret societies have all claimed the Templar legacy, weaving the accusations of heresy into their own mythologies. Whether true or false, the whispers of occult practices became the most enduring part of the Templars' legend. No longer were they remembered only as crusaders. They became something darker: custodians of mysteries, practitioners of forbidden rites, shadows moving at the edge of Christian orthodoxy. And so, as we move forward into the story of their downfall, we must ask: were the Templars destroyed by lies, or by truths too dangerous to be revealed? For nearly 2 centuries, the Knights Templar stood as the shield of Christendom, wealthy, respected, and feared. Their red crosses flew over the sands of the Holy Land, their fortresses dominated Europe, their coffers overflowed with riches. But as the Crusades faltered and kingdoms crumbled, the Templars found themselves without a holy war to fight. In the silence that followed, they were left with their wealth, their power, and their secrecy. And that made them dangerous. The shadow of debt. By the dawn of the 14th century, Europe itself had changed. The crusading spirit was fading, Jerusalem had been lost, and Christian kingdoms in the East had collapsed one by one. To kings who once relied on the Templars' swords, the order now looked less like an army of God and more like a wealthy corporation. One king in particular saw the Templars not as allies, but as prey, Philip IV of France, remembered as Philip the Fair. His reign was ambitious but costly. Wars with England, lavish spending, and constant political maneuvering had drained the French treasury. And when a king finds himself drowning in debt, he looks to his creditors. The Templars were those creditors. They had financed Philip's wars, safeguarded his treasury, and held vast estates within France. Instead of seeing them as protectors, Philip saw them as rivals, an empire within his kingdom, loyal to Rome, beyond his control. Worse still, he owed them money he could never repay. And so, Philip devised a plan as ruthless as it was shocking: the destruction of the Knights Templar. Friday the 13th. The fateful blow fell on Friday, October 13, 1307, a date that still echoes in superstition. At dawn, across all of France, Philip's men stormed Templar commanderies. Knights were dragged from their beds, chained, and accused of heresy. The arrests were swift, coordinated, and merciless. The charges were shocking: idol worship, blasphemy, unnatural sins, spitting on the cross. Every rumor that had ever haunted the Templars was suddenly unleashed as fact. Thousands were taken prisoner. Their properties were seized. Their order was declared corrupt, rotten to the core. It was a masterstroke of propaganda. Philip knew the public was already primed by centuries of whispers about the Templars' secret rituals. Now, with the king himself declaring them heretics, few dared to defend them. Fear spread like wildfire. Friday the 13th was no longer just a day, it became a symbol of treachery and doom. Torture and confession. The arrests were only the beginning. Under Philip's command, the Inquisition subjected the Templars to brutal torture. Men were stretched on racks, their limbs pulled until bones cracked. Some were burned with hot irons, others drowned through water torture. Under such agony, knights confessed to anything their captors demanded. They admitted to worshipping idols. They confessed to spitting on the cross. They acknowledged obscene rituals and unnatural sins. The more they confessed, the more Philip's accusations seemed justified. Yet many later retracted their words, declaring they had spoken only to escape unbearable pain. Still, in the eyes of the public, the damage was done. The Templars' sacred image was shattered. They were no longer holy warriors, they were heretics. The Pope's dilemma. At first, Pope Clement V was hesitant to believe the charges. The Templars were, after all, the Church's warriors, loyal to the papacy. But Philip was relentless. He pressured, threatened, and manipulated until Clement had little choice but to yield. In 1312, under the weight of political pressure, the Pope formally dissolved the Order of the Temple. Its lands and wealth were, in theory, transferred to their rivals, the Knights Hospitaller. In practice, much of it flowed into royal treasuries, particularly Philip's. The greatest military order of Christendom was no more. The martyrdom of Jacques de Molay. Yet the story did not end with the suppression of the order. Its final act came in 1314, on an island in the Seine River in Paris. There, after years of imprisonment, the last Grand Master of the Templars, Jacques de Molay, was led to his execution. He was old by then, weary from torture and chains. But as he stood before the crowd, flames crackling at his feet, he spoke words that would echo through the ages. He declared the innocence of the Templars, proclaiming that their confessions were lies forced upon them. He denied the charges of heresy, and as the fire consumed him, he is said to have cried out a curse, that both King Philip and Pope Clement would answer before God within a year. Legend tells us the curse came true. Within months, both Philip and Clement were dead, their sudden demise is seen as divine vengeance for the destruction of the Templars. Whether fact or coincidence, the tale sealed de Molay's image as a martyr, and the Templars as victims of treachery rather than true heresy. What was destroyed, and what survived the fall of the Templars was brutal, but it was not complete. Across Europe, some knights quietly melted into other orders. Others retired into obscurity, protected by sympathetic rulers. In Portugal, the order was rebranded as the Order of Christ, continuing under a different name. In Scotland and Switzerland, legends claim fugitive Templars found refuge, forming secret brotherhoods that would outlive their supposed destruction. But the greatest casualty was knowledge. If the Templars truly possessed forbidden relics, secret texts, or esoteric wisdom uncovered beneath the Temple Mount, then much of it was lost, or deliberately hidden. Were the treasures of the Temple destroyed in Philip's purge? Or spirited away, locked in vaults and caves, awaiting discovery? The forbidden legacy, the destruction of the Templars, marked not only the end of a powerful order, but also the birth of a legend. Their downfall transformed them from warriors into myths. Friday the 13th became a symbol of doom. Baphomet became an icon of occultism. And Jacques de Molay's fiery death became the spark of centuries of speculation. In the centuries that followed, the Templars would rise again, not in flesh and blood, but in story. Freemasons, Rosicrucians, occultists, and conspiracy theorists all claimed their legacy. In destroying the Templars, Philip and Clement had succeeded only in creating one of history's most enduring mysteries. The turning point, the fall of the Temple, was a turning point in medieval history. It was the moment when power crushed faith, when greed triumphed over loyalty, when kings proved that even God's warriors could be undone by politics. But it was also the moment the Templars slipped from history into legend. For though their order was dissolved, their secrets remained. And as long as questions linger, about hidden relics, lost treasures, and forbidden rites, the Knights Templar will never truly die. The flames of Jacques de Molay's execution in 1314 were meant to be the final chapter of the Knights Templar. The order had been dissolved, its leaders executed, its wealth seized. To kings and popes, the Templars were finished, extinguished from history. And yet, the story did not end in the ashes of Paris. Instead, it transformed. For even as Europe declared their extinction, whispers spread of survival. Legends claimed that the Templars had not died, but gone underground. That their swords, their treasures, and their secrets lived on in shadow. The vanishing fleet, perhaps the most enduring mystery, is what happened to the Templar fleet. On the eve of their arrest in 1307, the Templars possessed a fleet of ships harbored at La Rochelle, a port on the Atlantic coast of France. Yet when Philip's men stormed their commanderies, the ships were gone. Not a single vessel was seized. Where did they sail? Some say the knights escaped to Scotland, where King Robert the Bruce, excommunicated by Rome, had no reason to betray them. Legends tell of Templar knights fighting at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, appearing like ghostly cavalry to turn the tide against the English. Others whisper the ships sailed further, to Portugal, where the order was quietly rebranded as the Order of Christ and allowed to continue under a new name. More tantalizing theories suggest the fleet vanished across the Atlantic, carrying knights and treasure to the New World long before Columbus. On the windswept shores of Nova Scotia, symbols carved in stone are said to resemble Templar crosses. Was this coincidence, or evidence of an order reborn on distant shores? Portugal, the order reborn. Unlike France, not all kingdoms turned against the Templars. In Portugal, King Denis recognized their value. Rather than destroy them, he rebranded them in 1319 as the Order of Christ. Their lands, castles, and traditions lived on under a different banner. This survival was not symbolic, it was real. The Order of Christ became one of the most powerful organizations in Portugal, financing the voyages of discovery that would reshape the world. Henry the Navigator, the great patron of exploration, was a grand master of the order. Ships flying the cross of Christ sailed around Africa, across the Atlantic, and into history. If the Templars truly survived anywhere, it was here, their mission reborn not in Crusades but in exploration. Scotland and the Mason connection. In Scotland, the survival of the Templars is less documented but far more romantic. Legend claims that when Robert the Bruce faced the English at Bannockburn, a band of mysterious knights rode into battle beside him, striking fear into the enemy and securing Scottish independence. Were they fugitive Templars, sheltered in a land already condemned by Rome? From this legend, another theory was born, that the Templars blended into the stonemason guilds of Scotland, laying the seeds of what would one day become the Freemasons. Freemasonry, with its secret rituals, symbols, and emphasis on hidden knowledge, has long been linked, at least in myth, to the Templars. Though historians debate the connection, the symbolism endures, the idea of the Templars transforming into a secret brotherhood, carrying their traditions through the centuries. Switzerland and secret strongholds. Other tales place the Templars in Switzerland, where they supposedly founded banking traditions that mirrored their medieval financial systems. Switzerland's reputation for neutrality, secrecy, and wealth is sometimes traced back, through legend, to fugitive Templars who brought their financial expertise into the mountains. Though the evidence is thin, the echoes of the Templars' banking innovations are undeniable. The treasure that vanished. The question of survival is inseparable from the question of treasure. If the Templars truly fell in 1307, where did their legendary wealth go? Kings like Philip expected to seize immense riches, but found surprisingly little. This fueled speculation that the Templars had spirited away their treasure before the arrests. Theories abound: hidden vaults beneath Paris, buried caches in the French countryside, or secret shipments carried away by the missing fleet. Some say the treasure was not gold at all, but relics, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, sacred texts. If so, survival would not just mean men, but knowledge and artifacts too dangerous to destroy. Extinction, or transformation. Of course, it is possible that the Templars truly did perish. Many knights were executed or imprisoned, their properties seized, their leadership shattered. In most of Europe, the order was dismantled brick by brick. The stories of survival may be nothing more than legends, fabrications born of fascination with an order that had become too powerful to vanish quietly. And yet, extinction does not explain the persistence of their symbols. Templar crosses appear in unexpected places. Their legends intertwine with secret societies. Their supposed treasures re-emerge in myths from Portugal to Nova Scotia. It is as though, even if the knights themselves perished, the idea of the Templars survived, and ideas can be more enduring than armies. The dual legacy. The survival question splits their legacy in two. On one side, they were victims of power, annihilated by kings who feared their wealth. On the other, they were fugitives who slipped into legend, carrying their secrets into new lands and new orders. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Some branches may have been destroyed, others absorbed, still others transformed under new names. Whatever the reality, their supposed extinction only deepened the mystery. The Templars did not vanish from history, they became its greatest what if. What if they escaped? What if they carried their knowledge across oceans? What if, in secret, they continue even now? Echoes of survival. The Templars' survival, or extinction, is less important than the enduring fascination their story inspires. Whether they truly fled to Portugal, Scotland, or beyond, their legend has survived centuries of erasure. It lives in conspiracy theories, in Freemasonry, in tales of hidden treasure. It survives in the belief that no power so great could be destroyed completely. The truth may never be known. But perhaps that is the point. Survival is not always about flesh and blood, it is about memory, symbol, and story. And in that sense, the Knights Templar are immortal. When the last Grand Master of the Templars burned on the Isle de la Cite in 1314, many believed the order had perished with him. But rumors persisted that the Templars' greatest secrets had been spirited away, hidden aboard ships, buried in vaults, or carried across oceans. And here begins one of the most tantalizing theories of all, that the Templars not only survived, but may have reached the shores of the New World nearly 2 centuries before Columbus. The Vanishing Fleet and the Atlantic Mystery in 1307, when King Philip's men seized the Templar commanderies across France, they expected to confiscate immense treasure. But in La Rochelle, where the Templars maintained a fleet, they found nothing. No ships. No treasure. The vessels had vanished, sailing into history without a trace. This disappearance gave birth to centuries of speculation. Did the ships scatter to sympathetic ports in Scotland and Portugal? Or did they sail further, across the uncharted Atlantic? In the 14th century, maps were limited, but sailors knew of islands in the west, Iceland, Greenland, and whispers of lands beyond. If anyone had the resources, discipline, and courage to attempt such a voyage, it was the Templars. Oak Island and the Money Pit. The most famous legend tying the Templars to the New World centers on Oak Island, off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. In the late 18th century, explorers discovered a mysterious pit filled with layers of logs, stones, and booby traps. As they dug deeper, they found tantalizing clues, parchments, strange symbols, and construction far beyond what simple settlers could achieve. The site became known as the Money Pit. Over centuries, treasure hunters poured fortunes into excavations, convinced that something extraordinary lay buried there. Theories abound: pirate gold, Spanish treasure, but one legend stands out. Some believe Oak Island hides the Templar treasure itself, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or sacred texts smuggled from Europe. Supporters point to Templar-like symbols carved into nearby stones, including crosses and geometric designs. Skeptics dismiss them as coincidence. Yet the allure remains. The idea that fugitive Templars crossed the ocean and hid their greatest secrets beneath the forests of Nova Scotia continues to captivate adventurers even today. The Westford Knight and American carvings. Another piece of evidence comes from Westford, Massachusetts, where a carved effigy of a medieval knight lies etched into a rock. Local tradition claims it marks the grave of a fallen Templar, perhaps part of an expedition to the New World in the 14th century. The carving is faint and weathered, and scholars debate whether it is truly medieval, or a much later creation. Still, believers see in its lines the unmistakable shape of a knightly sword and shield. Further north, in Maine and Nova Scotia, explorers have uncovered stone crosses and petroglyphs that some attribute to European visitors long before Columbus. Are these remnants of Viking voyages, or Templar journeys? The answer remains elusive. Portugal's secret voyages. If the Templars truly reached the New World, Portugal may have been the key. After the order was suppressed, King Denis of Portugal transformed the Templars into the Order of Christ, preserving their wealth and traditions under a new name. In the 15th century, the Order of Christ funded Portugal's voyages of discovery, sending explorers like Vasco da Gama and Prince Henry the Navigator into uncharted waters. Could it be that the navigational knowledge guiding these voyages was not new, but inherited? Some argue that Templar maps, records, and perhaps even first-hand experience of Atlantic lands were passed down through the Order of Christ. If so, Columbus's discovery may have been centuries late. Conspiracies and the Grail across the ocean. The most dramatic versions of the theory suggest the Templars carried not just treasure but relics of unimaginable importance: the Holy Grail, the Shroud of Turin, or the Ark of the Covenant. Fleeing Philip's purge, they supposedly transported these sacred objects across the ocean, hiding them in remote lands where kings and popes could never reach them. Oak Island becomes, in this narrative, not just a treasure site but a vault of faith, a hidden temple protecting Christianity's most sacred relics. Whether these stories are true or not, they reveal the enduring hunger to believe that the Templars' secrets were too great to simply vanish in Europe's flames. History or myth? Mainstream historians argue that there is little concrete evidence of Templar voyages to the Americas. They point out that most of the supposed carvings and relics are ambiguous, and that no medieval documents confirm such expeditions. The Vikings, not the Templars, remain the only proven Europeans to reach the New World before Columbus. And yet, the theory refuses to die. Why? Because the Templars themselves were masters of secrecy, and their disappearance left a void that legends eagerly filled. The missing fleet, the missing treasure, the strange symbols, all become pieces of a puzzle that fuels the imagination. The enduring mystery, whether fact or fantasy, the idea of Templars in the New World speaks to a deeper truth: they remain symbols of the forbidden, the hidden, the just out of reach mystery. Even centuries after their destruction, people look for their hand in unexplained ruins, buried treasure, and coded symbols. Perhaps the Templars never set foot in the Americas. Or perhaps they did, leaving behind faint traces waiting to be uncovered. Either way, the very possibility transforms them from medieval warriors into timeless explorers, guardians of secrets that may still lie buried beneath foreign soil. The Templars may have been broken by kings and condemned by popes, but their presence never truly vanished. Across Europe, their symbols remain carved into stone, their architecture still rises against the sky, and their mysterious codes whisper from the past. If their armies were destroyed, their legacy lived on in the sacred geometry of cathedrals, in cryptic engravings, and in the forbidden symbols that later secret societies claimed as their own. Gothic cathedrals and sacred geometry. The rise of Gothic architecture in the 12th and 13th centuries coincided with the height of Templar power. Cathedrals like Chartres, Notre Dame, and Reims rose like mountains of stone, their spires reaching toward heaven, their stained-glass windows illuminating the faithful with kaleidoscopes of divine light. Many historians credit the Templars with financing, and perhaps even influencing, this architectural revolution. Their immense wealth funded projects that required generations of labor. But legends go further, suggesting the Knights carried architectural knowledge from the East, esoteric geometry, sacred mathematics, and symbolic designs that transformed mere stone into spiritual power. At Chartres Cathedral, labyrinth patterns carved into the floor echo designs found in the Holy Land. At Notre Dame, strange figures peer from the stonework, grotesques and symbols that seem to hint at hidden teachings. To some, these cathedrals are not just churches, but books of stone, encoded texts where Templar secrets were preserved for those with eyes to see. The red cross and hidden marks. The most recognizable Templar symbol is, of course, the red cross on their white mantles. But this simple emblem appears in places far beyond their cloaks. Engraved in castles, carved into church walls, etched into gravestones, the Templar cross became a marker of both presence and mystery. In southern France, crosses with flared arms, similar to Templar insignia, dot remote chapels. In Portugal, the Order of Christ adapted the cross into their own, emblazoning it on sails that would carry explorers across oceans. Even today, these crosses endure on flags, coats of arms, and insignias, a symbol whose origin is unmistakably Templar. But beyond the cross, more cryptic marks appear. Some Templar chapels contain carvings of two knights riding a single horse, an image both symbolic of poverty and hinting at duality, unity, and secret brotherhood. Others show strange geometric shapes, suns, moons, and stars, symbols that later resurfaced in Masonic lodges centuries later. Codes and hidden messages. One of the most enduring mysteries is whether the Templars embedded hidden codes into their architecture and manuscripts. Some researchers point to the use of numbers, particularly 3, 7, and 13, in their constructions, numbers charged with biblical and mystical meaning. Others claim that within the rose windows of Gothic cathedrals lie mathematical ratios tied to sacred geometry, echoing knowledge traced back to Pythagoras, Egypt, and even the East. To the faithful, these were designs meant to glorify God. To conspiracy theorists, they were encrypted messages, a visual language passed down through stone. Perhaps the most controversial claim is that the Templars left behind maps, geometric alignments of chapels and commanderies pointing toward hidden sites, perhaps even toward the New World. Skeptics dismiss this as fantasy, yet the allure of Templar codes continues to inspire treasure hunters and theorists alike. The Shroud of Turin. Among the relics linked to the Templars, none is more provocative than the Shroud of Turin, the linen cloth said to bear the image of Christ. Some scholars argue that the shroud was in Templar custody during the years of their greatest secrecy. In 1204, when Crusaders sacked Constantinople, they looted countless relics. Could the Templars have taken the shroud, guarding it until their downfall? During the trials, witnesses claimed the knights worshipped a mysterious bearded head. To critics, this was evidence of idolatry. But to some historians, it suggests they possessed the shroud, venerating the faint image of Christ's face imprinted upon it. If true, then their so-called heresy may have been nothing more than secret guardianship of a relic too sacred to expose to political hands. Influence on secret societies. Centuries after their destruction, the Templar legacy re-emerged in the rise of Freemasonry. The Masons claimed spiritual descent from the knightly order, adopting their symbols, rituals, and myths. Masonic temples often display Templar crosses, swords, and references to Solomon's Temple, the very site where the knights had once made their home. Even the idea of hidden knowledge, preserved through ritual and secrecy, echoes Templar traditions. Whether this connection is historical fact or myth woven for prestige, the symbolism is undeniable. The Templars had become the archetype of the secret brotherhood, their forbidden symbols resurrected in new forms. The forbidden legacy. The Templars' symbols endure because they exist in the realm of duality. A cross is both holy and martial. A labyrinth is both a path to God and a code of mystery. A grotesque face on a cathedral can be dismissed as decoration, or seen as a veiled message. To the Church, their legacy was meant to be erased. Yet stone remembers what men forget. And in carvings, cathedrals, and symbols, the Templars continue to whisper across centuries. Were they architects of hidden codes, or are we projecting modern mysteries onto medieval stone? Perhaps both. For every generation finds in the Templars what it seeks: saints, heretics, magicians, or architects of the sacred. And as long as their symbols endure in stone and art, the Templars themselves endure, reminding us that their story was never truly destroyed, only encrypted in the fabric of history. The flames that consumed Jacques de Molay in 1314 were supposed to reduce the Knights Templar to ash and memory. Yet, paradoxically, their destruction only magnified their legend. Centuries later, the Templars would resurface, not as an active order, but as an idea, a symbol of secrecy and forbidden knowledge. From Enlightenment secret societies to 20th-century occultists and even modern entertainment, the Templars have become the cornerstone of conspiracy itself. Freemasonry and the Reborn Order. The first great revival of the Templar legend came in the 18th century with the rise of Freemasonry. Masons, secretive societies of stonemasons and thinkers, began to claim spiritual descent from the Templars. Their lodges were decorated with swords, crosses, and references to Solomon's Temple, the same site that gave the Templars their name. Some Masonic rites explicitly adopted Templar imagery. The Knights Templar degree, in York Rite Masonry, became one of the highest honors, drawing a direct line between medieval warrior monks and Enlightenment-era brotherhoods. Whether this was true continuity or symbolic borrowing mattered little, the myth was powerful. The Templars became the archetype of the secret society, their aura of forbidden mystery breathing life into a new age of ritual and symbolism. Revolution and secret orders. As Europe moved into the age of revolution, Templar myths became political weapons. Some revolutionaries in France styled themselves as heirs to the order, casting their struggle against monarchy and church as a continuation of the Templar fight against oppression. Jacobins in the French Revolution even invoked Templar imagery in their rhetoric. Later, esoteric groups like the Rosicrucians and occult fraternities wove the Templars into their origin stories. For them, the order had not been destroyed but had gone underground, preserving secret wisdom passed through generations. These myths gave such groups an aura of ancient legitimacy, even if the historical links were tenuous. Occult revival in the 19th century. The 19th century saw the birth of modern occultism, and with it, the Templars re-emerged once more. French magician Eliphas Lévi famously illustrated Baphomet as a goat-headed, winged figure, declaring it the idol of the Templars. Though completely speculative, his depiction cemented the image of the Templars as occultists, guardians of forbidden rites. From there, the idea spread. Mystics, spiritualists, and occultists across Europe claimed the Templars had guarded secrets of alchemy, Kabbalah, and hidden gospels. To them, the order was not destroyed in 1314, it merely went deeper into the shadows, its wisdom reserved for those deemed worthy. The Nazis and the Dark Templar myth in the 20th century, even darker appropriations emerged. Nazi occultists, obsessed with Aryan myths and hidden knowledge, sought to tie their ideology to ancient brotherhoods. Heinrich Himmler's SS was deliberately modeled as a knightly order, drawing on imagery eerily similar to the Templars. Himmler even envisioned Welsburg Castle in Germany as a new temple of the SS, its circular chamber echoing Templar legends of secret rituals. Though the Nazis distorted history for their own ends, their fascination with the Templars demonstrates the enduring pull of the order's myth. They became a blank canvas on which tyrants could project fantasies of power, secrecy, and destiny. Popular culture and the eternal allure beyond politics and occultism, the Templars found immortality in popular culture. Novels, films, and games resurrect them endlessly. From Umberto Eco's Foucault's Pendulum to Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, the Templars appear as keepers of secrets, guardians of the Holy Grail, or conspirators shaping world history from the shadows. In video games like Assassin's Creed, they are portrayed as the eternal enemies of freedom, an order that never truly died but continues to manipulate humanity. In films like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, they guard sacred relics in forgotten temples. Even in modern documentaries and television shows, the Templars remain a magnet for mystery, treasure hunts, and forbidden history. Why do they endure so vividly in popular imagination? Because they embody the perfect paradox: monks who were also warriors, paupers who became bankers, saints who were accused of heresy. Their duality makes them endlessly adaptable, heroes, villains, martyrs, or conspirators, depending on the storyteller. The conspiracy that never ends today, conspiracy theories continue to weave the Templars into everything from global banking cabals to the founding of America. Some claim the Templar treasure funds shadow governments. Others believe their lineage survives in modern elites, pulling the strings of world events. In internet forums and speculative books, the order is cast as the hidden hand behind history, guiding humanity in secret. These claims are rarely grounded in evidence, but they thrive because the Templars left a perfect vacuum. Their destruction was sudden, brutal, and cloaked in false confessions. Their fleet vanished. Their treasure disappeared. Their secrets were never revealed. And in that silence, imagination rushed in. Myth stronger than history, whether in Freemason lodges, Nazi fantasies, or Hollywood blockbusters, the Templars have become more powerful in myth than they ever were in life. The true knights of the 12th and 13th centuries were flesh and blood men, bound by vows, fighting brutal wars. But the Templars of legend are something else entirely: eternal conspirators, guardians of forbidden truths, shadows that never die. It is this transformation, from historical order to mythical archetype, that ensures their immortality. The Templars may have been burned at the stake, but the idea of them survived, shape-shifting across centuries, becoming whatever each generation needed them to be. The story of the Knights Templar begins with dust and blood on the roads to Jerusalem, and it ends with fire consuming their last Grand Master on the banks of the Seine. In between, it is a saga of paradoxes: warriors who were monks, paupers who became kings of finance, protectors accused of heresy. Their rise was meteoric, their fall catastrophic. And yet, their legend is eternal. From warriors to myths, the Templars were born of necessity, forged in the chaos of the First Crusade. They pledged their swords to God and their lives to protecting pilgrims, but soon grew into a power that rivaled kings and terrified popes. Their discipline made them invincible in battle. Their innovation made them pioneers of banking. Their secrecy made them mysterious. When the world turned against them, it was not on the battlefield but in the courts of kings. Accused of heresy, tortured into confessions, and burned at the stake, they were erased not by Islam or foreign armies, but by the very Christendom they had served. Their fall was proof that in the medieval world, power without a crown was a death sentence. The end that wasn't, and yet, for all their destruction, the Templars never truly disappeared. Their symbols remain carved into stone, their stories etched into the architecture of cathedrals and castles. Legends of survival in Portugal, Scotland, and even the New World kept their memory alive. Every missing treasure, every unexplained ruin, every whispered conspiracy became a canvas on which the Templars' shadow was painted. Unlike other medieval orders that passed quietly into history, the Templars refused to die. Their very mystery kept them alive. A mirror of humanity. Perhaps the reason the Templars endure is that they are more than an order of knights. They are a mirror of our deepest fears and desires. For believers, they were martyrs of faith, betrayed by corrupt kings. For skeptics, they were heretics who dabbled in forbidden knowledge. For dreamers, they are the eternal guardians of hidden treasures, the Grail, the Ark, secret scrolls buried beneath Jerusalem. Every generation finds in the Templars what it seeks: purity, corruption, wisdom, conspiracy. Their story is not fixed, it is fluid, reshaping itself to fit the needs of each new age. The power of silence. What truly fuels the Templar legend is what we do not know. Their archives vanished. Their treasures were never found. Their rituals remain shrouded in secrecy. That silence is louder than any chronicle. It is a void filled endlessly by speculation, myth, and imagination. The missing fleet, the idol of Baphomet, the curses of Jacques de Molay, these may be fragments of truth, or inventions of power. But it hardly matters. Once spoken, they became part of the story, impossible to erase. Shadows that refuse to die. More than 7 centuries after their destruction, the Knights Templar remain among the most famous names in history. They live in conspiracy theories, in secret societies, in novels, films, and games. Their cross still flies on flags, their name still inspires awe, and their supposed secrets still drive explorers to dig into forgotten earth. They were destroyed by fire and sword, but not by time. The kings who condemned them are forgotten, the popes who excommunicated them are footnotes. But the Templars endure, shadows that refuse to die. Perhaps that is the final truth of their story, not the Grail, not hidden treasure, not forbidden rites. The true treasure of the Templars is their legend itself. A story so powerful that it outlived their order, their kings, and even their world. And so, as we close the book on their history, one question remains. Did the Templars truly vanish, or are they still among us, their secrets hidden in plain sight, waiting for those bold enough to uncover them? The answer, like the order itself, remains forbidden. The story of the Knights Templar may seem like it ended in fire and ashes 700 years ago, but history has a way of leaving echoes. The men who rode under the Red Cross are long gone, yet their shadow stretches across our modern world in ways both subtle and profound. The legal ghosts. In 2007, the Vatican quietly released documents from the secret archives, revealing the results of the Chinon Parchment, a forgotten record of Pope Clement V's absolution of the Templars. According to this parchment, the order was indeed guilty of misconduct, but not of outright heresy. In effect, the Church itself had acknowledged their innocence. 7 centuries too late, the Templars were partially vindicated. This revelation reignited debates. Had they been sacrificed on the altar of royal ambition? Were they martyrs of politics rather than sinners of faith? The Chinon Parchment did not erase the myths, but it proved one thing beyond doubt: the official story we inherited was carefully engineered. The tourism of mystery today, Templar castles and chapels draw millions of visitors. From Tomar in Portugal to Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, tourists flock not simply to see stone and mortar, but to feel the aura of the forbidden. Guidebooks sell legends as much as history. Treasure hunters still dig at Oak Island. Secret society enthusiasts still whisper of hidden vaults and underground chambers. The Templars have become a brand of mystery itself. Their image sells books, films, games, and tours. What was once accusation and slander has become entertainment and myth-making. The cultural afterlife. In many ways, the Templars' greatest survival has not been in blood, but in culture. Their cross, their codes, their aura of secrecy have been adopted by Freemasons, conspiracy theorists, esoteric groups, and even pop culture franchises. From Hollywood blockbusters to late-night internet rabbit holes, the Templars remain the quintessential secret keepers. But the deeper question lingers: why them? Why not the Hospitallers, the Teutonic Knights, or countless other orders of the medieval world? The answer lies in their fall. No other order ended so dramatically, so mysteriously. No other knights carried secrets into the flames. Their very destruction birthed their immortality. What the Templars teach us: perhaps the real legacy of the Templars is not their supposed treasures, but the warning their story carries. They remind us that power without a crown is dangerous, that independence in a world of kings is fatal. They remind us how secrecy creates myth, how mystery breeds conspiracy. And they remind us that truth is fragile. A lie, repeated often enough, can burn men alive. A rumor, whispered in shadow, can outlast centuries of fact. The echo that remains: so, were the Templars heretics or saints? Were they guardians of sacred relics or victims of royal greed? The truth may never be fully known. But perhaps that uncertainty is why their legend endures. In every hidden chamber, every cryptic symbol, every unexplained ruin, the Templars live on, not as flesh and blood, but as eternal echoes. The world may never uncover the full truth of the Knights Templar. But as long as questions remain, questions about power, faith, and secrecy, there will always be those who look to the red cross on white and wonder, what secrets did they carry into the flames? The answer may remain forever forbidden.